Figure it out as we go, right?
Yeah.
So, welcome back, everyone, to the new and improved. And you say, hey, it's always new and improved. We're always rebooting this motherfucker. But the reality is, Scary Dad got a job, and Scary Dad's been working hard and long hours and focusing on getting his training completed so I can stop getting... The company went through a restructure and stuff, so I'm getting these emails that says, hey, you need to finish this training. It was assigned to you in April, like in August of 2020. And I was like, well, that was prescient of you because I wasn't even here then. Like, how much do y'all know about me?
That sounds like where I work.
But yeah, so I've been working and we just couldn't schedule a show. So now we got some new stuff going on. So without further ado.
First, the old business.
All right. April 14th, born on this day in horror history. We're going to go way, way back into the archives. 1904.
Oof.
Remember Sir John Gielgud?
Yeah.
He was in so many movies. He was in Frankenstein, The True Story, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And he was in the 1984 version of Frankenstein. He was in so many other things.
Yeah.
He's one of those names that... You Google him and the list is just long as hell. Let's see. Rod Steiger, 1925. The Illustrated Man, the Amityville Horror, and Mars Attacks.
Classic.
And these guys were in other movies besides these, but these are their horror claim to fame. Comedian Kenneth Mars in 1936, who was in Young Frankenstein and Full Moon High, and he also did a lot of voice cartoons for Scooby-Doo. 1941, Julie Christie, who was in Demon Seed, Fahrenheit 451, Don't Look Now, and in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. 1961, Robert Carlyle. He was in the SGU Stargate universe, 28 Weeks Later, Aragon, and he was also in Once Upon a Time. 1968. We've been talking about maybe trying to do something with Weird Science, but here we go. Anthony Michael Hall. He was in Weird Science and The Dead Zone.
Yeah, he did that series on USA or whatever, yeah.
He was also in Edward Scissorhands.
Mm-hmm. Did a great douchebag.
He did it. He was a nerd, and then he turned into a douchebag. Yeah. It's like, I guess that's what happens when nerds go through puberty.
He put on weight. You saw that? Like, at that time, like, he went for really scrawny. It's like, it looks like he's been hitting the Krispy Kreme in the gym, man. He's put on a little weight. The truth is, though,
man, like, because he was such a lovable nerd, like, I didn't believe him in Edward Scissorhands. Like, he was good, but it was just like he was playing so far against type. Yeah. It was just like, dude, don't be mean to the outcast. You are the outcast.
Someone threw a Slurpee on you at the mall. Why are you doing this?
All right, 1973, Adrian Brody.
Oh,
who's in King Kong, The Village, Hollywoodland.
The Jacket. Such a great job in The Jacket.
He's in Alien, or he's in the Predator kind of reboot.
Predators,
Predators.
Yeah. Great actor, the pianist.
1977, Buffy herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Cool.
She was in also, I didn't know she had such a horror. She was in Scream 2, mm-hmm. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scooby-Doo 1 and 2, and The Grudge 1 and 2.
Yep. Which was pretty much the same as the original Grudge 1 and 2. Like, same director, same house, same script.
Same,
shot for shot.
Kind of boring in that way.
In 1996, Abigail Breslin, who was in Signs and Zombieland, Honor, The Call, Maggie, Final Girls, and Scream Queens. So, happy birthday to all of you. And if we missed anybody and it's your birthday, happy birthday to you as well. And we got some show to talk about, so that's old business. We're going to take a break and cut in with the new.
You know who to call when you have ghosts. But who do you call when you have monsters?
We're the Monster Squad.
What's a squad? It's like Miami Vice, I think.
They're young and inexperienced.
Naughty virgin.
They're a bit disorganized.
Monsters are not real.
We don't know that, sir.
2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
But when strange things start happening in town,
There's a monster in my closet.
Ooh, look at that big, scary monster.
What's happening? Two ways to kill a werewolf.
Silver bullet?
they're the only ones ready to do battle.
Something's out there that's killing people. And if it's monsters, nobody's gonna do a thing about it but us.
Soon the creatures of the night shall rule the world.
Real monsters? Us? Midnight. In the world, remember? Maybe we can be like Mass Squad instead, you know. Two mass bombs.
We got 235. Sit back up. Hurry
Or Nature Squad. The book was right. Don't you think it's all true?
By midnight,
You guys!
they won't seem so young anymore. The Monster Squad.
Wolfman's gone mad.
And we're back. Okay, Mr. Gomez.
New business is new business, and this is new business.
All right, just to lead off, of course, as you guys, I'm sure, are well aware, at the age of 50 years old, the world has lost DMX. Most unique rappers to ever come out. He had a very distinctive voice, very distinctive style. And what I love about DMX, besides his demons regarding drugs and alcohol, of course, I've never heard a bad word about that guy. He's not one of those rappers that had beef with other people. He didn't make songs where he was talking bad about others. He was a little homophobic, in my opinion. But he was genuinely seemed like an actual good dude, and he unfortunately lost him way too early. He's actually supposed to do a concert at Wildcatters in about a month. And, yeah, he was scheduled to be over there until this incident happened. So, R.I.P. to DMX. All right. In today's episode of Why Are You Doing That With Technology Right Now? I'm not sure if you guys saw this video that got released recently for Elon Musk's new Neuralink transmitter that he put out. Have you seen this video?
The one playing Pong.
With
The
the
monkey
monkey.
playing Pong.
Yes.
Yes. Dude. We're coming full circle. My first video game was Pong. Let it begin.
Here in a little while, the monkey's going to start bitching that the graphics suck.
These pixels are crap.
But in the video, the monkey who has a Neuralink transplanted into his brain is seen playing a Pong game with the controller. And at some point, they activate the Neuralink, unplug the controller, and the monkey is able to continue playing Pong with only his thoughts.
Genius.
So
Beautiful.
The Neuralink is seen as a way for, let's say, quadriplegics and people to be able to utilize smartphones and technology and stuff by just using their minds.
Robotic prosthetics.
They'll actually be able to, do these tasks faster than we can, as far as sending a brain impulse
Right.
to your hand and using it. So
It's pretty great. It's pretty crazy.
he's calling it a Fitbit for your skull. Originally revealed at a press briefing in August 2020. This has been our first video of it actually being used in a macaque, a primate. So we'll see where that goes.
I remember the first time I'd heard about it was he was on a Joe Rogan podcast like early last year or something, and he was talking about how they were working on this Neuralink technology.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see where it goes with it. It's pretty amazing technology.
Oh,
to
yeah.
be honest with you.
Yeah, it's about time we got some future stuff other than fancy new phones.
They're just
Or a
no
car
more-
that parallel parks itself.
no more remote control. Just look at your TV. Think about what you want to watch. what
See,
you
that's
want
going to be terrible because my brain flashes through so many things. My screen's going to give me seizures.
You're going to get in trouble because your wife's going to want to
Dude.
watch, Love Actually, and it's just going to flip to porn.
Dude, I'm
She's
going to
be
look.
like, stop that!
I'm going to look at tits, and I'm going to
Later.
see tits, and then tits are going to pop up, and then I'm going to get kicked out. Second thought, I don't want Neuralink. I don't need it. Not for my TV.
Okay, next up. I found this article and I found it interesting for the headline reads, Pandemic brings more calls for exorcism ministry by Archdiocese of Indianapolis. Now, when you think hotbeds of exorcism, would you think Indiana?
Suddenly I do. Suddenly it's oh so clear. What are we doing in Indianapolis?
Okay, a Catholic priest who does, I love this. He does thousands. This is singular. One Catholic priest does thousands by himself of exorcisms a year.
God bless him.
But does he have time? It's like 3 or 4 a day without any days off.
Right? I saw The Exorcist. This is supposed to take days.
And I love this. He does them year-round in central Indiana. So this is only one, small
spot.
area of Indiana.
It's
This
gotta
one
be-
guy is doing he's not spreading out.
Right.
to the corners.
Apparently it's just
right
reoccurring
there.
or
There's
something.
thousands of
He
exorcisms.
just sucks at his
Maybe
job.
he's doing them via Zoom. He doesn't have to leave the parish. He can just, the power of Christ compels you and signs off.
And he says the pandemic has only made it worse.
Poor
And he
guy.
feels as though the extra time the pandemic has provided has given him the time to write a book about his experiences, of course. So he's going to be selling this book. He grew up on the west side of Indy in the Hallville neighborhood, the 7th of 9 children. He was initially appointed to exorcism ministry. He was one of 12 in the United States. Now there's more than 125 certified exorcists in the United States from the Catholic Church. It's crazy, dude. The Satanic Panic ended way back when. You would
That's
think
what they
of-
wanted you to think.
That's amazing. I'd love to meet this guy. Not enough hours in the day for this man. How did he write a book? Where did he find the time? You know what I mean?
Tell him you got problems. And have him come over, and then
Dude,
you're
I
like,
need,
well,
I need to meet. What's his name?
I don't
Sorry.
really have a demon
Per se.
but I really just wanted to talk to you. So
He's been doing it for 15 years. Says that he's seen it all. He's seen levitation, eyes rolled back in the head, foaming at the mouth, people falling on the floor, slithering like a snake across the ground, speaking language otherwise unknown to an individual, and exhibiting superhuman strength.
Dude, I've been to
Everything is
Third
straight
Ward,
out
too.
of a Hollywood.
Yeah, I've been to Third Ward. I've seen all that.
He trained for 3 months apprenticed for 3 months under a Franciscan priest in Rome.
It's like a mail away program. Did they have like an online college I could sign up for this?
They have a picture. They have a picture of Reagan, and you go ahead, draw the outline, and send it.
Yeah,
in.
it's authorized to like Arizona
And
U
then
or
you
something
can
like
click.
that.
Yeah, so interesting article. Like I said, I didn't think Indiana would be a hotbed for exorcisms.
Yeah,
but
that's-
It's
apparently
at 500, man.
is.
It causes a lot of people to lose their minds.
and all those horses.
All right, a little bit of horror news today. Another reason to subscribe to Shudder. The Fangoria Chainsaw Awards are coming to Shudder this month.
I'm ready.
April.
I'm ready.
This is actually, while there hasn't been a televised horror award show in years, the Chainsaw Awards have been going on since 1992 when the magazine first started.
Right,
So
right.
This isn't a new thing, but it kind of will be new on television.
I think the last time I saw one was like on Spike. When they had Spike TV,
Yeah.
they had like a horror award thing.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So the presenters have been announced for the 2021 awards. Starting it off is David Malshin from Ant-Man and the Wasp, actor and writer. Jamie Lee Curtis will be presenting. Keith David, Gigi Soul, Guerrero, director of Culture Shock, Isa Lopez, Kevin Smith, Tyrannive Duo, Jason Blum, James Judd Courtney, Doug Jones, and Bitch Puddin', who is a drag artist.
That's the one I'm holding out for. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
But yeah, so that's going to be happening April 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central for anybody that wants to
Dude,
check it
that's ever since I got Shudder. I tell you what, man.
out. I heard Creepshow's really good.
I find some good stuff on there, and half the time when I'm looking for a new horror movie that doesn't pop up on Prime unless it's for rent, I just randomly check Shudder, and most of the time it's there.
Right.
And we're able to watch a lot of stuff. I mean, some of it is hot garbage, but sometimes you want hot garbage. But it's one of those subscription services. I keep that.
It's like I was telling somebody the other day, as long as it's fun, hot garbage, I'll
Right.
watch that.
Don't
shit
take yourself
over
too
and over.
seriously. I'm going to run over you with that bullshit. But if you're having fun with it, be garbage, sir.
And leading into our...
Pause real quick. Okay. Need headphones.
It's very good. That's really good. Was Brave Star the one where the guy had the gun in his chest? Or what was that? Or was that another one?
All right. What you got next,
Okay,
bro?
now leading into part of our discussion for the day, announcing a release July 23rd, 2021. The fourth installment of Hotel Transylvania will be coming out, which is Hotel Transylvania Transformia.
Dude, they're just going to keep doing it. It's going to be like The Land Before Time. It'll be like 20.
That's like, dude, Adam Sandler just like goes to the ATM. Like other people go to ATM, Adam Sandler's like, let's make a movie. He's just money.
But wasn't his thing, one of the reasons he came out with some of the shit he came out with recently, didn't Netflix say, hey, we'll give you $50 million, make 10 movies for us? So he was like, okay.
Like,
so
I
he
can do
just
that.
made a bunch of garbage.
He calls his friends up, like, hey, you guys want to make some
You guys want to hang out?
Netflix is buying.
Bring the camera over. But that being said, Deadline notes that the movie is the final chapter in the Sony Pictures Animation
So you name your part
franchise.
4 final chapter, and you expect anybody to believe that that's
So
what
was Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
Well, what's funny is on Friday the 13th, I don't know if I ever sent it to you, but me and my cousin made a movie when we were kids. It was a parody of Friday the 13th. And I was maybe 13 years old at the time. He just had a camera. Me and him used to make all kind of stupid ass shit. And we named it Friday the 13th Part 8 because we thought there's no way they will ever have
Never
part
going to
8.
get to 8. Now you got to name it like 13 or 15.
The funny thing is, he posted it on Facebook, and I watched it. And no lie, the music, cinematography, and everything was better than a shit ton. I've seen so many crappy indie films that, like, I'm sitting there watching it, and, like, the cutaways, and I'm not, like, it's a parody. It's supposed to be funny, right? But, like, there's this long still shot. You see Scott. He's, like, in the shadows. Like, there's a light up behind him. You can't see him. He's making the Jason. He's like... But it's like this long, dramatic, kind of slow roll in. Like, the guy's, like, just kind of creeping so the camera's steady. And I'm like, okay, that is well shot indie film compared to a lot of the stuff that I've seen. Man.
Dude, me and my cousin Mark used to come up with the crazy shit. We did a Max Headroom parody. And what we did is he had a Commodore 64.
Right.
And on the TV, we put his Commodore 64 screensaver. He put on a suit, and I got off camera, and we filmed him with me talking to him, and then we played it on his mom's projection television, and I just mimed the words back so it looked like we were having a conversation with each other. And there's like one part where I take a knife, and we had filmed it to where when I pull the knife out, he jumps back and shit. I mean, dude, it's crazy how good a 15 and 13-year-old kid back, in 1985.
That's pretty great.
Making all this stupid shit.
It's awesome. Dude, the Friday the 13th one's pretty awesome. No mask. He's got no mask.
It's just me with my curly hair.
It's just a hockey enthusiast. No mask to be found.
There's a scene where I get hit by a car. It's so funny because it's cutaway shots. We edited it with 2 VCRs. So you know how when you used to stop it, you would see the transition between you see all the transition. Nothing's smooth, dude.
It's cool though. It was funny because he posted it and I watched it. I was like, for a couple of kids messing around in the backyard, it was pretty damn good for, you know what I mean? Like, y'all had a future there.
But that's what I got for today.
Awesome. Well, let's not fail to mention, if you've made it this far, you're more interested in us and what we're doing, that we just announced our 4th, even though it's year 5, our 4th annual Scary Dad's Haunted Halloween show.
The final chapter.
Let's hope not. But October 30th, Wildcatter Saloon. Hit up the website, check out all the fun stuff we got going on. To be honest, with 2019 really not hitting on all cylinders, and 2020 we get kind of blown out of the water by the pandemic. I was kind of thinking that experiment was over, but then 2021 kind of comes roaring back and let us know that the horror community is strong and they want to come out and play, and we're here for them. So
it's going to be a different kind of show. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be a full day and night party.
Yep.
And a celebration of Halloween. So we love Halloween. We didn't get to celebrate Halloween very well last year, so this is the year to make up for it.
It was on a perfect day. Everything lined up.
Yeah, we're going to have guests coming. So far, the only guest that we have announced, of course, is because they'll actually be playing a concert that night, is Ari Lemon with first Jason, of course, Doyle with Doyle.
Yeah, from the Misfits.
Yes. And we're going to have some cool costume contests. We're probably going to do a Jason costume contest judged by Ari. And we're going to have, it's going to be a good time.
Cannot wait. It's going to be so rad. All right. Well, that is the first half of the show, or the first part of the show. We're going to get into it in just a second.
Are you hungry? Hungry as a gremlin? Here's gremlin cereal.
Gremlins, bite after bite. What a tasty way to satisfy a gremlin appetite.
Gremlins is a deliciously sweet, crunchy cereal that satisfies the hungry little gremlin that's in all of us.
Gremlins, bite after bite. What a tasty way to satisfy a gremlin appetite.
Gremlin cereal is part of this complete breakfast.
Gremlin, yum yum.
Okay, so as many of you know, I did a show called You Know What's Awesome, and my co-host Ricky and I were both veterans of the horror podcasting community. That's how we met. We met at Frightmare. We met because of Frightmare. We follow each other's shows. We've guested on each other's shows, and we put awesome together, and we're like, okay, this is not a specifically horror show. This is just all things awesome and from our lives, so it's a nostalgia show. But being who we are, we kept falling back, almost kind of leaning into the horror genre just by accident. It's just something that pops up and we talk about it. But one thing that was constantly a subject was the concept of gateway horror. And what that was the stuff that maybe it was, Halloween special spooky, but it wasn't really a horror movie. It wasn't like you saw, like Scott's mentioned many times, that he saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre way too young. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a horror movie made for people to watch a horror movie and not made for children. We're talking about the stuff that's kind of not even necessarily made for children, but just kind of has that kind of...
There's some horror tropes in it.
Got that trope. Yeah, that thing that draws you in, that makes you just kind of want to look further into it, that pulls you in. So we got Boomlin with us today.
Yay!
And, we're going to just talk about that cool shit out there. So this is episode a lot.
Find a number.
Yeah. I think it's like 171 or 2 or 3 or 4. I don't know. There's a whole lot before us, and there'll be a whole lot after. So welcome to the show. And without further ado, what was the thing that just made you be like, ooh, I want to see more of that?
Well, one of the ones I definitely want to bring up, because it was a huge part of my childhood and a lot of people's childhoods, is, you had Conan came out, big fantasy movie. It just blew the box office, and people started looking at, ways to capitalize off of Conan's success. And one of those things was coming out with the movie Beastmaster. Beastmaster was supposed to be a fantasy movie, Conan type thing, ended up having several horror elements in it that were just, it was amazing. I mean, I rewatched it recently. It's on Amazon Prime right now if you haven't seen it yet. It's just a great movie, man. I mean, they have everything from the witches that work with Rip Torn.
Yeah.
They have child sacrifice.
Just having Rip Torn.
Just Rip Torn. They have the birdmen that dissolve the flesh.
Dude, what are like eagle people, whatever, condor people. Those people are fucking awesome. That was the most of their budget, you could tell. They were terrifying.
The berserkers that are created by putting leeches in their ears.
Glowworms in their ears.
I mean, it's just it's a great movie. It's almost, it goes back and forth for, being a kids movie with John Amos in there from Good Times, protecting this young boy, and there's animals. I wanted a tiger so bad. I wanted ferrets. After watching that movie. Because they had all these elements for kids, but at the same time, the witches scared the shit out of you. Now, when I rewatched it the other day, one thing I didn't realize as much when I was a kid is witches were actually pretty hot.
Witches were hot.
Didn't look at their faces. They were really, really, really hot,
and they were mostly naked.
Yes,
and there was some things, because I watched it recently as well, and there were some things in Beastmaster that you don't like, because the action moves on, the story moves on, and so like, but if you pay attention, so for example, the bird people. When he comes upon the bird people, there's a little boy in the bird people's cage.
Yes,
yeah,
the thief or whatever.
The bird people have a child in a cage, like people put birds in cages, and the Beastmaster comes up and he releases the boy from the cage, and the boy's like, "Whoa, you know, there's bad news around here," and he lets the little boy go, and the little boy runs right into the arms of one of the birdsmen, and the little boy.
Yeah.
Is it just alive?
straight
Grab
up,
him
just like-
alive, and bones fall out.
I love the sound effects too. It sounds it's
The
so
child
good.
sacrifice
Just
is
the
just
whole
so unceremonious too. It's like it's child sacrifice time.
bit. Chuck the kid. Yeah.
Chuck a kid into the fire, just like and like I want that one. And there's like parents like cowering in fear because their child's being taken.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh my
Dude,
God.
one of my favorite parts is when they're on like a raft with a rope, and they're supposed to be ferrying to the other side of this waterway, and they've got these priests from the Judd Horde, the bad guys, and they've got them all tied with nooses around their necks instead of their hands or
Yes.
anything, but they're all around their necks, and they attach them to this giant water pillar. And they decide they need to shed some weight, so they just kick the
kick it
water
off.
pillar.
Yeah, it pulls
These
those
guys
guys
would be like
overboard.
dominoes yanked in the water, just drown them, fuck them.
But it
There
was-
they go.
and those
no
are the good
thought.
guys.
And those guys never panic. When they're being taken one off, they're just head down, ready to sacrifice. Like,
Right.
yep, this is a cult.
But,
But
those are your good guys too. Your good guys are the
Right.
ones that kick them off into the
Yeah,
water because
yeah.
they're just like.
But it's such an odd movie because half of the movie looks like it was geared to bring kids into that Conan fantasy realm, and then the other half of the movie, you know, the king has his eyes ripped out.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
He's in the dungeon after having his eyes taken out, dude. It's when the witch takes the woman's baby out of her belly and transports it to a cow. It's some scary
Dude, that
shit.
movie was on drugs.
So I was probably like 8 years old when I first saw it on home video. You know, my parents rented it, or it was coming on HBO. But I remember being, you know, my daughter's age, my younger daughter's age, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna watch this great movie. You know, it's called Beastmaster. You know, he talks to animals." Memories of memories, because I mean, I'm sure there was lots of movie nights, but man. My dad, you remember Ovaltine?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like the chocolate milk?
Yeah.
Like they popped popcorn and gave me some Ovaltine, and we're sitting there watching the Beastmaster. And through all of those horror elements that are going on, nobody cares. My parents are not like, ooh, this is maybe just a little bit too far for the kid. And I'm just sitting there watching it like, oh, this is... You know what got them? The boobs. Tanya Roberts at the river. She's like, they're like, oh, nope, you gotta close your eyes.
Don't look at
me
that.
I'm just like, oh, you can watch the Birdman, you know, like suck the
Yeah,
flesh from the bones of a child, but no boobs. That's bad.
Yeah, you can watch Rip Torn throw a kid into the fire pit at the top of the Aztec temple, but don't you dare look at those nipples, young man.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of the movie, the king dares to, you know, challenge Rip Torn's desire to do things he wants to do. So he looks at his followers, and they immediately know, okay, he wants us to kill ourselves.
Oh, yeah, they strangle themselves.
They commit suicide right there on screen.
I love how that's like the weirdest flex. Like, you don't think I could do it? Kill yourselves. They're like, all right. The king's like, oh, fuck, my
But yeah, so
bad.
that's definitely one that it had some. When it first came out, it had some surprising horror elements to it.
For sure, man.
Do you know
Sure.
what one really kind of crept up on me, and it was so wholesome, was The Secret of Nim.
Yo, yeah,
It's such-
I found the VHS the other day.
Yeah.
I rewatched it. It's such a good movie.
It's such a good
Still
movie.
is to
It's
this
got a
day.
beautiful soundtrack. Was it Don Bluth doing the art? Went on to do like Dragon's Lair and stuff like that. Just great story, and it's very much, you know, family thematic. You know, it's a woman and female trying to provide for her family, for her kids, because she lost her husband. It was a little deep, but you were a little kid and you can ignore those elements and just caring parent figure. But doing that when the owl comes in and like she goes into the dark part of the forest, that was bloody terrifying.
Right.
Oh, and the sword fight with the rats.
Oh,
and,
yeah, no, there
The
was-
rats just look so evil.
They
The-
did
the
such a
red
Don
eyes
Bluth,
and
and they did
stuff.
such a great job scoring that, and the sound. It went from family friendly to horror really fast.
Well, what was interesting is at that time you didn't have adult animation. You had heavy metal. And
like
that was
Watership
that was
Down.
specifically geared towards adults. Secret of Nim was more
It
geared
was
towards
a family
kids.
film, right?
Well, and Disney found themselves in this kind of quandary because I was looking into it because like Black Hole, which is like a prequel to freaking Event Horizon, really. Have you ever watched that? It's
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah.
But it's a sci-fi movie. It's a Disney sci-fi movie. But so Disney was finding themselves at a kind of this strange crossroads in that their core audience had grown up.
Yeah. It's like
And,
the comic books.
and so instead of looking and going like, well, there's a new generation of children born every day. Let's just keep focusing on that demo. They followed their demo up, and they started getting into some really dark places. So you see, you know, the Secret of Nim and like, and every, like, Disney's the leader, so everybody was kind of following them. But, you know, like, you got some straight up horror movies with, you know, like,
kid stuff like the Black Cauldron.
Yeah.
Dude, that had, I mean, it was almost like, you know, I forget who did it. It wasn't Disney, but it was their answer to Excalibur, or to the Sword and the Stone, the Black Cauldron. And it was all based around very horror-esque Halloween imagery, skulls and black magic and demons and stuff. And that's one that gets almost no love nowadays. I think at that time that was a movie, they geared it toward children, and it hit so far past them that even adults were like, well, we probably, I mean, it didn't have nudity or curse words, but it was just so dark. And people didn't know what to do with it. So they kind of shy away. And even to this day, a lot of people haven't seen the Black Cauldron. But it was
I saw it when I was a kid. I haven't seen it in a long time, but
Yeah.
I've kind of been on a fantasy kick lately with like Beastmaster and like Sword and the Sorcerer and stuff. Because one of those was, I was going to mention, you know, it's probably my youngest, like, ooh, this is some spooky doo here. It was like, I was a big fan of Scooby Doo, right? And I remember being, you know, like freaking like 4 or 5 years old, and you know, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I wasn't in school yet, so like I'd have to take my afternoon nap. And when I woke up from my afternoon nap, Scooby Doo was on, right? And then, so I watched Scooby Doo, but then my parents bought me one of those records, the book record combination,
right.
and it was a Batman book record combination, and he was fighting Man-Bat. And so, you know, the intro of Scooby Doo, where you've got the bats like, you know, squeaking. So that sound, well, every time Man-Bat was in the scene, you'd have that screech of a bat, and that thing scared the bejesus out of me. And I went back and I saw it again, you know, later, and it's really not a scary story because, you know, if you know the story of Man-Bat, like he's trying to create a vaccine or something,
right.
and he was using like bat DNA, and he ended up turning into the Man-Bat. And he's kind of an anti-hero. He's like not really bad, but he's
misunderstood.
Well, he's violent when he loses control. He's like a Jekyll and Hyde character.
Yeah.
So it wasn't where he was like just he wasn't hurting anybody. He was just being him, and Batman was coming to get him. That book scared the crap out of me. But then I was always just like fascinated with that kind of.
Right.
You know, because that's just kind of where I lived, you know. Like, back with Scott and I have talked about the Weekly World News and, like, the Loch Ness Monster and, you know, the things that live in the shadows. Those sorts of things. Right. And even though it scared me, I really just wanted to kind of, like, peek inside and, like, shine a flashlight and see what was there. Because...
Well, it's similar to, you know, enjoying roller coasters.
Right.
You know, that's one of the reasons why I loved horror so much as a kid. Horror movies, we'll get this in another episode, but horror movies that I shouldn't have been watching, it was that adrenaline rush.
Right,
You know, once I discovered that, and it was fascinating to me, just that these things existed. And especially, we'll get into that. Along the lines of, back to what we were talking about, along the lines of Secret of Nim, we were talking, another one would be Dark Crystal.
Yes.
Dark Crystal was another one.
Yeah, great stuff.
And the Netflix series did such a good job of staying true to
that was
the
Jim
original.
Henson.
Yeah,
great puppetry.
But just when
work.
they rip off the feathers of that one vulture character, that was scary as hell as a kid. That was just creepy as all get out, man. But that was another one that had plenty of horror elements to it. It was the one woman with the sorceress with the crazy eye and everything.
You know who brought out some gateway stuff for a lot of people. One of the things that I remember seeing as a kid that really kind of pulled me deeper into horror was watching the video for Thriller. And I mean, because the video, I mean, the song is okay, but when you get the video, you get the whole thing. Taking the girl to the theater, watching the scary movie. You get the I forget who did the effects. It wasn't Baker. But the wolf effects, the zombie effects, and that.
It was Stan Winston, wasn't it?
I forget who did the effects.
It was either Stan Winston, Rick Baker, or Greg Nicotero. In fact, I think it was Rick Baker, actually.
It could have been. I didn't think it was. But, dude, the effects are on point. The werewolf, when he turns into the wolf, looks amazing. The zombie effects, whenever they're doing the dance sequence. And then when the video continues with her hiding in the cabin and him smashing through the door. And you got Vincent Price doing his monologue in the left. Dude, that was horror all the way through. It was a beautiful video. The way that was shot was just, there was money spent. And Michael Jackson at that point, I mean, he's still a big name long after he's gone. But at that point, it's like he was at his apex. He was king of the world. Thriller was like the #1 album. I didn't own albums. I had Thriller.
Yeah.
And do that video had to have sparked interest all over the world
Into horror.
Into horror, just with the effects itself. It was just amazing.
And there were so
work.
many in that movie. There were so many odes to horror.
Yes,
past.
dude. You look when they walk into the theater, you can see the classic movie posters in the background. There's just so many
just
elements.
Like the old drive-in style horror movies with the date. Bringing Vincent Price. One of the,
He's wearing a Letterman jacket when they sit down. It's so good. He's got like a Teen Wolf homage in
very,
there.
Very 50s, 60s,
Yeah.
like even 30s and 40s.
Universal Monsters type film.
Universal Monsters.
Yeah, the effects were on point. I mean, they look better than a lot of movies coming out at the time.
Yeah.
So whoever they brought in a professional team. And you
I'm
could
pretty
tell
sure it was Rick Baker.
There was a love of horror going into that, and that blew my mind.
I think it was directed by John Landis, actually.
It may have been.
It's something I want to look up because I think John Landis, because he was riding high off of Werewolf, and I think it was John Landis that did. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
I'm gonna look it up.
Now, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say the next one I was going to bring up, and I promise everybody we're going to get to some newer movies, but you got to realize we're a bunch of old dudes sitting around. So we primarily talk about things that affected us most as children, but you cannot talk about unintentional horror without talking about Clash of the Titans.
One of the best movies that is
that claymation, bro.
That's ever been
that
made.
stop motion.
Stop motion.
Jesus, so
but
much.
Just another one where you have the witches sharing the one eye. You have
The Fates,
Medusa getting her head cut off and put in a bag, and the dude just pops it out whenever he needs to use it. I mean, that there were a lot in the swamp with Calibus. And
cuts his
hand off.
yeah.
Then he sticks a hook in it. It's just there's so much in that movie that. It was scary as a kid.
It was scary. Dude, I love that movie so much.
Yeah.
I love that movie. I didn't know there was toys for it until I was grown.
Dude, me neither. I was
but
like, where were these when I was a kid?
If I had known, I would have been all over.
I mean, that Kraken figure is just awesome, man. I found a Calibus because it was it's G.I. Joe size Calibus.
So the makeup for Calibus was just nuts.
Yeah.
He looked terrifying.
Yes.
Dude, he looked like the devil. I mean, he's red with horns and a tail. Like, right? He's just like, he is the devil. And, dude, there's just so much good in that. Like, dude, because that's Maggie Smith. Whenever her head falls off, the statue.
It was
and they're
Athena,
like
right?
And, and the eyes open, and she's like, "You done fucked up now."
This scared the shit out of me. As a kid, that was a jump scare. All of a sudden, and the music hits. Yeah, that movie, that's another one that, as a kid, it gave you that adrenaline feel that you just come to love from being scared from horror, man.
So it was directed by Landis, and it was Baker who did the effects.
Okay.
Boom. Points for me.
I didn't think it was Baker, but
I remember reading about it being Baker at one time.
it's just, dude, the makeup in that is so incredibly on point.
And it blends so well with the music and the choreography. I mean, it's an outstanding video.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
an experience.
yeah.
It's not just a music video; it's an experience.
Easily, yeah.
So, I was gonna say, like, talking about the fantasy stuff before we get off that. I went back recently because I used to watch this movie all the time because it is just so awesome, and there's underwater boobs in it. But Dragon Slayer,
dude, I made my kids watch it. They thought it
Dragon
was absolutely
Slayer
amazing. I've watched it a million times. I have the VHS, DVD.
Dragon Slayer is so brutal.
It's got Pee Wee from Porky's, but yeah, I definitely remember the underwater.
So brutal, man. And like, I used to watch this thing all the time, and it scared the shit out of me every time because the dragon's just brutal. Like the dragon
is brutal.
Is not nice. But the crazy thing about it that I didn't notice ever growing, like when I was watching it as a kid, because I used to like look away certain scenes, like, oh shit, like that's. And there's a lot of them in that movie, but the princess. So if you don't know the story of Dragon Slayer, and like spoiler alert, the princess dies because that's how it works. But the princess finds out. So the story is there's this dragon that the wizard made a deal with, that there's a lottery every year, and they take a person and they sacrifice that person to the dragon. And the dragon won't kill everybody. So the wizard dies. So then the pact is broken, and then the dragon just starts, going apeshit. And then the princess finds out that her father's been rigging the lottery. And so leaving her name out of it. So in a act of ultimate heroism, she rigs the opposite way.
It's all her name.
And she makes the whole lottery is nothing but her name. She's going to sacrifice herself for her people because she's noble and she's awesome. So you think this is going to get her, to the end credits. But no. The dragon comes out. The Dragon Slayer rescues her. Busts her off of the thing and it's like, come with me and if you want to live. And she wrestles him off and runs into the dragon's cave. And you're like, okay, at some point this dragon is going to be like, okay, mutual respect, fist bump. You came in here and you were noble and you were fearless and you self-sacrificed. So, When Dragon Slayer goes down into the cave, the baby dragons are eating her princess.
Yes.
Like fried chicken.
And those baby dragons were creepy as hell.
The baby dragons are scary as hell, but they're chomping down, and the effects, like the flesh effects of those dragons eating that dead princess, are just ruthless. Like, this is one of those films where, like, these people are living in a world where there's not a whole lot of happy endings, and this wasn't one either. And son of a bitch, dude, I didn't realize how much, like, I had not watched that movie in like 20 years. I watched it not too long ago and was just like we do Fresh Eyes. This to me really was Fresh Eyes because I had what I thought was memories. And when it came out, I was like, this is one of the scarier movies I've ever seen. It was freaking ruthless. It was a Disney Lucasfilm parody in the early 80s because that's what they did was they just, like, they killed children and, like, it was make unhappy endings.
It's a great movie. I had my kids watch that and Excalibur, which is another one that
opening scene where he's just humping the shit out of his. It's like hardcore porn, and you're just like, "Oh, thanks, Dad. Thanks for putting this one on."
I thought it was Flash Gordon. It turned out it was Flash Gordon. Sorry about that.
But those movies are just so good, man. They were so good, and they hold up so well to this day, man.
They need to do a 4K on Dragon Slayer because, dude, on VHS in 1981 technology, that dragon's flight, it looks better than Game of Thrones. It is amazing.
Dude, when the dragon comes crawling out, when he's crawling through the cave, for the time period that movie came out, I have no idea how they did that effect. It looks like CGI, but there was no CGI back then. But the dragon is just hauling ass through the cave and shit after Pee-wee from Porky's.
That's who he is now. That's always ever going to be, is Pee-wee from Porky's.
But yeah, it's a great film. Definitely. There's some scary elements.
Yeah, you want to show a 7-year-old that movie and be like, so, let's not be a horror fan after this. Like, dude, I got to see how they did this. This is amazing.
There was a lot of good stuff. I was already pretty deep into horror when it came out, but I had friends that were big into like the Nickelodeon horror, like Goosebumps, and like Are You Afraid of the Dark and stuff like that. I mean, I'd already moved past it. I was already into more hardcore stuff.
Me too. Yeah.
But that was that allowed a lot of my friends to kind of get a little more interested in horror itself. They got their little taste of the ghosts.
And wanted to see more.
Right, and they'd ask me about it. Like, hey, you like ghost movies? I've got some, we can watch Poltergeist, or you like demon stuff. Hey, man, I got this stuff at my stepdad's video store, because he had a video store in Friendswood, so I had open season on anything I wanted to watch, and I was that guy. A lot of my friends' parents were very Christian, very proper, no curse words and stuff. They'd come and stay the night at my house, because I could show them all the R-rated stuff.
Yeah.
And they'd say, oh, I saw this Goosebumps that had like a killer doll. It's like, yeah, I killer dolls. Pop in Child's Play, Just completely ruin them for the whole thing.
Well, speaking of Goosebumps and stuff, that's one thing that I often get asked. I'm sure you guys get asked too, or you just see people post on Facebook or whatever, social media. What's a horror movie I can introduce my kids to?
Yeah,
to see if they enjoy horror. And
Jurassic Park.
But what I wanted to bring up, which I did a rewatch of this the other day. I talked about it on the podcast before. You know how much I love Saturday the 14th.
It's such a I've watched it so many times when I was younger, and I just never got. It was so weird. You watch
what's
it.
What's interesting is I watched it the other night. Now, Saturday the 14th came out in 1981, approximately 3 years before Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
In Saturday the 14th, I don't know if you remember the bathtub scene where it's identical to the future Freddy scene,
Right.
Where
With the hand coming out.
yeah, except it's a fin coming out
Right,
this time.
right.
Also, the address for the house on Saturday the 14th is 329 Elm Street, which I thought was interesting.
Aw.
You know, I was wondering, did Wes Craven do a little ode to?
Maybe he certainly did an ode to Phantasm when he made Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Right.
But the thing is too, and that was another thing we on an awesome podcast because we were talking about we watched Spaceballs, and Mel Brooks is in a whole league of his own. But there was a lot of parody movies that came out that I'm gonna blame the Wayans brothers for stuff like Scary Movie, where it's like we're parodying this movie, but we're just gonna fill it full of falling down
Random
and
shit
and farts and stuff.
The first parody they did was amazing.
But then you take Saturday the 14th is a cohesive story.
Sure.
It's kind of funny, but it's got those kind of comedy horror elements, like dun dun dun.
Right.
But it's actually, it's not a good movie by any stretch, but it's a better movie than a lot of the parody movies out there. And I remember because I was a little kid watching it, I'd never seen Friday the 13th, but I remember seeing these little monsters and just different things going on, and it was spooky and it was interesting. And so
introduced you to
certainly
vampire?
landed well with me.
Right. And you had
the
Transylvania 65000 and stuff. That was very, very. It was a little
It was
more.
Goldblum, right?
Yeah, it was a little more put together version of Saturday the 14th. You had a lot of. You had your Mummy and your Dracula and all that, kind of pairing it all together. And there was your little horror elements, callbacks to classic Universal monsters and stuff. It was just genuinely great. That and young Gina Davis in that outfit, good golly.
Well, Saturday the 14th was a much lower budget too.
Oh yeah, of course.
But it's still a fun movie. It's a fun movie to watch for sure.
Yeah, there's always a special place in my heart for that one. I like to see whenever people are trying to pillory it, but the things that they say they hate about it are what makes it what it is.
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of like, I'm building a house. You're like, well, it's only one story and it's ranch style. It's like, well, that's the plan. That's what I was building. Like, what did you expect? Corinthian? That wasn't, that wasn't what I was building.
I think one of the things for gateway horror, and I love that it's still kind of going with the parody thing, is movies can start off very comedy-esque, but like Pixar films, they can play to audiences like Shaun of the Dead. It starts off very much comedy, and it's comedy all the way through. Don't get it wrong at all. But there are also very shocking and deep horror elements, like the guy being ripped apart through the window. Dude, there's some gore in that movie.
Like Zombieland too.
But yeah, it starts off at that very accessible point where it's comedic, it's funny, there's good timing. So people that are well versed in horror can watch it and go, "Oh, I see the little homage bits. This is pretty great." And the people that are new to horror get that comedy to start them off before the gore kicks in. Mm-hmm. So it makes that ending more accessible because they've already invested time in the beginning.
Right.
So it drags them into it, and they go, "Wow, maybe I like zombie movies. What other zombie movies out there?" And then they start down that drain.
Right.
And next thing you know, they're exploring new directors, they're seeing new stuff.
Well, another one that would fall along those lines would be, of course, Gremlins. One of our favorites.
See, I'd have to if this was Whose Line Is It, I'd have to buzz you on that one. Because Gremlins is straight up horror, man.
But
it starts off as a Christmas movie.
Gremlins was written, produced, directed, and everything with a hard R in mind. It was a scary movie. It was a horror movie that Steven Spielberg's freaking marketing machine got on top of. And they're like, we could make money because Gizmo's cute.
Right.
But that's a horror-ass movie.
It's also a movie.
Aliens.
It's also a movie. You can introduce a 10-year-old kid with that movie. I mean, it's not to the point where there's a bunch of gratuitous nudity and shit like that.
Yeah, even the blood is pretty much green throughout. You see very little red blood. It's scratches and stuff.
Except for they tell you, like, Kate's Santa Claus, not only do you realize...
Right, he's eaten alive,
That Santa Claus...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but there's a lot of lighthearted moments in that movie. Like the bar scene. Yeah. It's all played up for fun.
When they start singing the Snow White Does Have a Door song.
Yeah, dude, that have 3/4 of that movie is accessible to kids, but then when it gets dark, dude, it gets rough.
I absolutely love Gremlins. It is absolutely probably in my top 10 of all time favorite movies. Period. I still think It's not gateway in that you're poking your head in to see what's going on. that one reached out and grabbed you and pulled you in. I was like, this is a. I mean,
I don't know.
I like. I'm just.
I think it could trick people. I think with the family elements, it's a lot like people went into like Terminator expecting an action film. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got guns. It's an action movie. It's a horror.
It's
film.
a horror movie.
Mm-hmm. But it plays very
slasher.
well. So it can get you into it in that aspect of, oh, it's a Schwarzenegger action film. And at the time, he was starting on his peak.
Yeah.
He was in transition to being the biggest star on the fucking planet. And that was going to bring in dates. Oh, I'm going to take my date. We're going to watch this action movie. And then it got horror. When it got horror, it dug in. There's violence and just that mindless evil, that stalking death coming at you.
It's beautiful.
What's interesting, the other day somebody posted one of the original write-ups of Gremlins had Gizmo dying at the end. And they posted the actual original script of that scene. It was sad. I mean, it was.
Well, in the original write-up, the Gremlins killed the dog that killed the mom.
Yeah. But
it was not a happy. It was a scary movie.
It was,
like Beetlejuice was like Beetlejuice could be considered gateway because it's so.
I think a lot of what Tim Burton did was writing that accessible for the younger audience, but it gave you the elements of that gothic horror, and it brought a lot of Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Nightmare Before Christmas. If you go to horror conventions, like those are like the predominant factors for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally agree with Beetlejuice. What I was gonna say is like, you know, when you mentioned like the difference between like a Gremlins versus Beetlejuice, like Beetlejuice was skating on the edges,
Right.
Whereas Gremlins was, I mean,
Gremlins went in a little bit more.
Gremlins went deep. You didn't know what you were getting into,
Right?
And when you came out of it changed. Whereas like with certain ones that we've been talking about, it was just a fun little lighthearted romp with elements that you're like, okay, you know, like cool. Let me go see what's behind. Let me go further into this. With Gremlins, you're like, holy shit, I'm glad I made it out alive.
Gremlins is just great.
Gremlins is so good.
Louis just shoved the one in the microwave. Dude, that effect, that sucker blowing up in the microwave. I can watch that on a GIF like over and over again. It's
so
beautiful.
Good. But what I was gonna say is, dude. So we went and saw Return to Oz at the theater. When Disney was in a really dark place.
Yeah, with Fairuza Balk.
Like
such a weird movie. Those weird
so
skating
good,
things.
So bizarre.
What the fuck is wrong with this movie?
The Wicked Witch with the heads.
Yeah.
And they're all like in horror because they're disembodied heads with personalities, and she puts them on and becomes herself, and that's just all these different. Oh, the wheelies.
Yeah, with their weird. Do you know? Was another accessible kids movie that went freaking dark was Never-Ending Story.
Mm-hmm.
Starts off very, I mean, not super light. He's being bullied and everything, but it has that upward mobility of your soul, and you're like, yeah, he's the hero now, and everything's good. But once like he enters like the swamp of sorrow,
and loses the horse just commits suicide.
and the horse dies, and he meets the turtle, and then there's the wolf, and it's destroying the world. And you're like, wow, man, this movie's fucked up.
It is.
There's like the world disappears into nothingness. And you're like, oh my god, we're all screwed. It ends on a high note, but dude, when that movie kicks, like the laser beams that if you don't have belief in yourself, they'll destroy you. They see into your soul and they'll blow you to smithereens. Dude, that movie got dark, like real dark. If you could make it through that movie and have some small sense of self still aligned, you can be in horror. You could take horror at that point.
Well, I was going to throw in Goonies because even though nobody really gets hurt, there's a lot of really scary stuff in the Goonies. And the Goonies is, again, it's a Richard Donner, like the music's all, you've got the young cast, it's a bunch of kids on an adventure. It's Peter Pan, guys. I mean, we're going to go search for pirate treasure. But then you got the dead guy in the ice cream freezer and, the skeletons everywhere. And then, the ramifications of, somebody had to, they rationally, somebody had to have gotten out because how would they have gotten the map or the key or any of that other stuff? But ultimately, that dude had to have been one survivor,
right? Because
he killed everybody else,
right?
So the whole ghost ship of dead pirates, they're all stabbed and stuff. There's so much, horror underlying the
Yeah,
whole concept
yeah.
of Goonies. But we just bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Dude, they were
It's
gonna feed Chunk's hand into the blender,
Uh-huh.
and you were just kind of like, all right, here we go.
Dude,
you see, you
Sloth.
weren't, yeah.
Sloth
Yeah.
is like...
We don't want to get into the human rights abuses that went into Sloth being chained to the wall.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I mean, there's just... Goonies is just one of those, because, you've got your you mentioned Lost Boys earlier. Well, Lost Boys is pure horror. It's horror.
Right.
It's rated R.
Right.
It's a vampire movie.
Right.
It's got a lot of horrific elements that I think we're desensitized to because we saw it so often when we were kids. But it's kind of like RoboCop. Like, RoboCop is a hard R film.
You don't even want to play with Paul Verhoeven. That man will just viscera infinitum.
But you got Goonies, it's like PG-13, PG or whatever, and my kids are watching, they're like, this is terrifying. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. It's up there with the good stuff.
Then you give the Goonies a beer or two, and it becomes Monster Squad, which was pretty much just a slightly older Goonies. They cursed.
Yep.
They said bad words.
They smoked.
They smoked.
That one
They
kid just
looked at Playboys in the
like
clubhouse.
that kid that's smoking the whole time because he's the older cool brother, and you're like, dude, the kid's like 12, and then, like the director's like, all right, light up another one.
Let's get back on
roll
set.
tape.
It's good for you, kid. It puts air in your chest. You sound like John Wayne.
Dude, Monster Squad was awesome to me because that's another one of those where, again, it's an adventure film.
It was geared toward teens.
I mean,
that's
the
where
story, like,
was.
and that's one of those good things about Monster Squad is, in stuff like Explorers and a lot of those teenage comedies from the 80s is like it didn't patronize you. It didn't pretend like you didn't know what was going on.
Right.
These kids are in actual danger. They're living their lives in a real story, and the story was good.
Oh, it
and
was.
Then you have
The effects were good, too.
Then you have the monsters, and the monsters themselves are kind of throwbacks. So Frankenstein's a nice guy, and like
You had your Wolfman, the Black Lagoon. You had Dracula, the Mummy.
And for my questioning mind, I'm just like, okay, so what's this about? Who's that guy? What's his story?
Oh yeah,
I want to go back and like, Dad, who's the fish guy? That's a creature from the Black Lagoon. You never seen that? Rent that and watch it.
Yeah.
Like, watch it.
Yeah, dude, it was so engaging and it was so accessible to so many audiences. If you were in your teens, you were watching this. This was what a lot of kids, especially people I knew, got into. It was kids going off on their own, parents nowhere to be seen. They're going to save the world. They're going to adventure. They're going to do all that, but they're squaring off with these universal monsters. And it was. The Fishman looked great. Yeah, he's got the shotgun. He's a badass. They put the dynamite in the Wolfman's pants, kick him out the window, and it was just so good. One of the things that really got me about it was they liked horror, and I loved horror. I mean, I wasn't as big into the Universal stuff, but I'd seen a lot of it. And there was a scene when you first introduced to I forget the guy's name, playing the Wolfman, and he's in the phone booth, and he's calling the police, and he's begging for help. And that scene really got me because it gave humanity to a character that I'd always seen as just mindless. I never really paid attention to Landon and I was a teenage werewolf and stuff. I was just always a werewolf. He's got a curse. He's going to kill people. But seeing that, like, wow, he doesn't want to be a werewolf. And that gave a whole new dimension. And I started watching more werewolf movies because then I got into American Werewolf in London where, dude, the transformation in that is just bone-breakingly amazing. But that whole point of the reluctant villain, I don't want to be the villain, and I thought it was just it grabbed me. It made me want to know more.
At the end, when he gets shot and he transforms
and he says
back,
thank you.
He says thank you.
It's so good. It's poignant because you feel bad for him. It's like he doesn't want to be the villain, but he just has to be.
What'd you do?
I told her to stop coming up and sniffing us and doing stuff she knows she's not supposed to do, and she decided to bite my foot.
Oh, well, good on you then.
It sounds like my second ex-wife.
Yeah.
Man, I wish it was a joke. I should see the scars on my feet.
Back to Monster Squad, the twist ending, where she's like, come quick, there's monsters. He calls the army. And
dude, I love how the army shows up.
And they're like, they look like is Timmy here? And he's like, that's me.
Yeah,
They're like,
me.
where's the monsters? They're like, we already took care of it.
Dude, I love that the army shows. Like, the army got there. Because it's always like a running joke. Like, we got to call the army.
But his note is, come quick.
Yeah.
There's monsters.
There's monsters.
And
the army was like, well, damn it, we better go.
Well, somebody tell me what the Sam Hill is going on here. It's so great.
Yeah, stuff like that really brings you in, and it gets your interest stuff. A lot of those movies did more than just drag me into horror. They gave me an appreciation for the stories, but they also drug me into like the directors and the actors. And that's when I started realizing, I had a style. I didn't know what the fuck my style was, but I started realizing I had certain tastes. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, this guy did this. Let me look up this, and I found, like Landis. I'm like, oh, what else has he done? This
Animal
special.
House.
Yeah, dude, I fucking love Animal House.
Well, no, Animal House is brilliant, but
right, and then you get like Twilight Zone the movie, and then you start digging in, and that really, because of those younger films, watching a lot of that stuff, again, giving me appreciation for what was just on screen, but who put it on screen. I started looking up those things, and you start finding out like Romero did these movies, and then Wes Craven does this stuff. And like, oh, I really like how this person does effects. What other movies do they have? Dude, once IMDb came out on the internet, dude, that was my number one site.
I don't know if you saw the post I made the other day.
Yeah.
Dude, I
live on
can't watch a movie without getting on IMDb.
I want to know who did these effects. What else did they do? Let me look up some of their catalogs.
That's why, I was looking at, I made that post today. Who would you put on your Mount Rushmore? Horror. And I was honestly, I'm like, it would be directors.
Yeah.
It would be guys that created the movies that I love. Wes Craven would be up there. Easily. There's certain directors that just, what they did made such a profound effect on my life.
And they influence cultures, like pop culture. Horror,
big time.
It blew up, and you got to where people who don't even speak the same language as the directors and the actors and the script writers making these films. Like Freddy Krueger is iconic.
Oh, dude.
You go to any country in the world, and they know who Freddy is. They know who Jason is.
You wear a hockey mask.
Well, I had forgotten completely the scene in like Christmas Vacation. There's an action figure. Eduardo had one.
Yeah.
There's an action figure at the horror con of Chevy Chase with his chainsaw and his hockey mask whenever when he's going crazy and cutting down the next door neighbor's tree. It was like, oh shit, that's how it crosses over, the chainsaw and the mask. Tom Hanks did it, or was it Tom Hanks? It was Michael Keaton and Mr. Mom.
Yeah,
because with the chainsaw. Like there's certain throw-ins to like their little nods, their little
What was it? Tom Hanks did like a Nightmare on Elm Street reference in The Burbs, where he's talking about like Freddy Krueger's claw coming out. What was it? Was that The Burbs? He's all he's like clawing him up. It's just it branched out, and horror is a very universal thing. A lot like comedy.
People like being scared. Love. They like adrenaline,
right?
Just like roller coasters. Right. Like I was saying, they just that feeling, that rush. It gives people a euphoria. It sounds weird for me to say that, but
no.
Watching a scary, like you say, you mentioned the roller coaster, and I think that is the best thing because I catch strange hell for being both a horror writer and a horror fan, a horror podcaster. I do a Halloween show. Like everybody's like, man, you're Mr. Halloween. Like, well, in my everyday life, in my reality, like I'm a dad. I like a nice yard. I make Easter decorations too. I love me some comedy and stupid old sitcoms. Like I don't just necessarily walk around living horror, but there's just something about it that just, like you say, it's like the roller coaster ride. When you sit down and you watch a good scary movie, or even if you watch a bad scary movie, you get in, you strap in, you go for a ride, you come out, and you're either like, that was awesome, I want to do it again, or you're like, oh, that was lame, I've been on better rides. But it's still just a ride, and it's so much fun.
Right. Well, I tell people all the time, I did a post about this on the Facebook forum, most of my comfort movies are horror movies.
Easily.
They're the ones that put me in a good mood.
Easily. I
So
laugh
like-
so
And
much.
I
Yeah.
find myself sometimes, one of the reasons I'm still fucking single and I've been single for so damn long is I'll meet people and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I love horror movies too. I love scary movies."
Everybody says that
And
shit,
I'm
man,
like,
until it comes down to the
yeah,
fact.
like if I throw on, break out the VHS tapes and do a three movie basket case marathon, are you going to be okay with that? Because most of them won't be.
A lot of them don't fully. I've had people, because I'm a big horror dude, and I talk about horror all the time. And one of the questions I get randomly from people that aren't big into horror is tell me a movie that's scary. I tell them, I haven't been scared by a movie since I was a little kid.
I try to tell my kids that
It's not
shit.
about. It wasn't about. Does it scare me? It's like, does it bring me in? Am I entertained? Does this pull me forward? Do I giggle a little bit? Do I like, oh, what's coming? Here
Well,
it is.
The thing is, to me, like that's always been my rating scale,
right?
On scary movies and books, like especially since we started the podcast, is it scary? Because we are desensitized. There are certain
Sure.
So like again, quick story, like we were doing a fresh eyes on Lost Boys, like
Right.
and that's one of my that's one that I could probably quote from beginning to end. And sitting down with my wife, she's like, "I've never seen it." I was like, "Oh my god, it's the best movie ever." We sit there and watch it, and I'm sitting there watching it fresh eyes, realizing that there's a lot more horror elements in it. There's a lot more makeup, effects, violence, and death than I remember, because I just remember it being awesome. I don't necessarily remember specific details. Just it's kind of like a record.
Yeah,
You're like, Power Slave is an awesome record, and you're like, okay, get into the songs, and you're like, oh shit, the solo on Power Slave is amazing. You don't realize it when you're thinking about the record until you get to the song. She's like, this is, she's like, it's not for her. She's like, this is dumb. This is like, I can understand why you like it, because you were a teenager in the 80s. And if you were a teenager in the 80s, I understand, but to me, this is kind of dumb. I'm like, fair enough. Move along. She's like, whoa. You can't just go to bed and leave me alone. We have to watch like something funny or something. Like, get my
You need
mind
a palate
off this.
cleanser.
Because she needed a palate cleanser, because to her it was actually scary. To me, I was just like,
It's Lost Boys.
It's rock and roll. It's Lost Boys. It's like that roller coaster ride that you've been on 100 times. You forget about the little whiplash thing at the end that makes everybody else dizzy, and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Watch your step getting out.
What she needed was to get that image of Alex Winter's mullet out of her head. That beautiful crimped mullet, gorgeous. No wonder they killed him first.
I think that's going to bring us to the end of this one. We have had a blast talking about gateway horror, and you know what? I think we're going to pretty much hit stop and then start over again on something else. Thank you as always for listening to the Scary Dad podcast. Check in next week, same time, same channel, and keep it scary.
Later.
Have fun.